Okay, I have finished The Last of Us Part 2, and here are my thoughts about the game. Obviously, spoilers. Also, I'm filming this after one playthrough, just before I dive back in to go for the platinum. Couple of points before I get to the actual game, which overall I think is pretty good. I'm going to break down the game into likes, okays, dislikes. Before I get into the game, I have 2 points. First of all, thank you. I was trying to avoid spoilers, and not one of you spoiled the game for me. I jumped off social media pretty darn quick because someone could tag you that you're not familiar with, and images are just floating around in general. So I was like, I'll just stay off social media. But the problem is with YouTube, all my videos are public. Anyone can comment under them, and it is this thing of, what am I going to do? Upload a video and not respond to people? So I'll roll the dice. If I get spoiled, I get spoiled, but I can't not look at the comments on YouTube. However, none of you spoiled it for me. Some of you voiced your displeasure. I can't believe what they've done. I'm not buying the game. This is terrible. But I won't tell you why. I'm just, I'm not happy. Or even after the game was out several weeks and you'd finished it. Also, I finished the game, Adam. What do you think? Have you played it yet? Have you finished it yet? Where are you? But none of you wanted to spoil it for me, so thank you. I don't know what I've done to get such a wonderful group of people around the channel. I'm quite grateful. Point 2 before getting to the game. One thing does bother me. Overall, the game, I'm happy it took chances. It's Naughty Dog's game. It's their world. It's their characters. Taking chances is perfectly fine. Otherwise, in the AAA landscape, you end up with just an homogenized group of games that all look the same, feel the same, play the same, and have the same stories. So, good on them for taking a chance. However, the marketing of the game. This is where I have a bit of an issue. Trailers are inherently misleading. The game won't be that exciting every step of the way. Hey, when you're playing gameplay, there will actually be a HUD. They're trying to sell you on the best version of the game. However, changing cutscenes to deliberately sell you on a story which the game is not about, bringing in a voice actor to record lines for a cutscene which won't be in the game, I think that crosses the line into outright lying. So the game is sold as basically something happens, Ellie, and she heads out on a revenge tour. Joel goes along with her and they butt heads and there's some tension about the ending of the first game. And I'm thinking, I'm in. Yep. Joel and Ellie off again and there's going to be a bit of tension. I want to see how this relationship goes. I'm in. You've sold me on the game. I will give you money. But that's not the game. Joel dies pretty early and that's what Ellie is on revenge for. Deliberately altering Joel's character skin from flashback Joel to modern day Joel, adding in a cutscene which isn't even there. I understand the intent is that they don't want to spoil anything. And when the first trailer came out and Joel came through the door kind of like as a shadowy, ghostly figure, people pretty spot on went, oh, Joel dies. Okay, gotcha. And this was 4 years ago. I'm sure the folks in Naughty Dog are thinking, ah crap, they figured it out already. Oh boy, we need to throw them off the scent. Throw them off the scent. Let's have Joel do the voiceover of the trailer to make it seem like he's a bigger part of the game. And his presence is in the game, but it's not the game I was sold. I feel lied to. Which is unfortunate because Naughty Dog were one of those studios I trusted. And now, going forward, no matter what trailer of theirs is put out for a new game, for Last of Us Part 3 or even a new Uncharted game, I'll see the trailer and I'll go, I don't believe you. Don't believe you. What you're selling me, I don't believe any of it. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Whoever's in charge of marketing, just bad. Bad. That's the one thing that leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Because there's ways around it. There are cutscenes in the game with Joel and Ellie modern day, and you can use a look of Joel's or a thing Ellie says. You can use parts of that in the trailer, and when people are asking, oh, is Joel along for the adventure? You can just say this is Ellie and Joel's story, and Ellie is the main character. Because you don't want to give away the Abby stuff 12 hours in. which is kind of like what they did with the first game. Oh no, Joel's the main character and you play as Joel, and then 12 hours in, oh, here's Ellie. So there's ways around it of being coy and not trying to give major plot points away. But outright lying and manipulating cutscenes, there's a line, and I think that crosses the line. So, on to the actual game itself. I have notes. I have a lot of notes. Overall, pretty good. I think the pacing in the second half, primarily with Abby, kind of slows down, and then it gets really ratcheted up towards like the end of the game with Ellie continuing her quest for revenge. But I think you're actually meant to feel exasperated at that point. Like, we're still going at this, Ellie? Are you out of your mind? So maybe that's purposeful, but the whole Abby section, while it has some great gameplay highlights, it does just drag the story for quite a while, and I grew very tiresome of just the gameplay and scavenging loop. The story didn't hit the same emotional highs for me as the first game. The closest is that final cutscene with Joel and Ellie, and that moment of I don't think I can ever forgive you, but I want to try, and that was like, oh no, especially knowing what happens the following day. And the gameplay and visuals are just much improved overall. Big step up from the first game. I still like the gameplay from the first game and its kind of limitations and playing around with them. But this one is definitely a step up. Okay, on to the likes. Everything involving Joel and Ellie. Basically everything from the flashback scenes to the final scenes modern day, the little bit of tension they have, anything involving Joel and Ellie is just amazing. And here's the thing. The final cutscene with Joel and Ellie, for me it recontextualized Ellie's entire journey. Where initially it seems like she's out for revenge, but I feel there's also a guilt to it. Because, so before this whole worldwide situation occurred, and when I was starting to get into rumblings, I was listening to an interview with an oncologist. Somebody who, unfortunately, in her line of work, sees an awful lot of death. And said that there's a good type of death and there's a bad type of death. And the good type is the one where you get to close the loop. Where you get to make amends. Where you get to say you're sorry. Where you get to reminisce, where you get to be around loved ones, where you get to say goodbye, where you're at peace, where you close the loop and you go, okay, I'm ready. You know, the stuff where you could ring up someone from 20 years ago and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I don't know what went wrong, I don't know why we fell off and our relationship didn't work out, and you know, you were a great friend to me and that didn't really work out, and I apologize, and they can say, no, it was me, and you make amends. Maybe with a family member you disowned and you're like, I feel bad about that. There are things you can just set right. And for Joel and Ellie, they start off here and they had all this tension about the endings of the first game, and that final cutscene where Ellie says, I want to forgive you. And Joel kind of tears up and says, I'd like that. And it's them trying to close the loop and trying to get back and make amends and at least move forward together. But unfortunately, Joel is taken away from Ellie in quite a violent manner. So it's not only the fact that she's out for revenge, it's also this thing of, we were so close. We were so close to being back as Joel and Ellie. And that was taken away. The guilt, the lying awake at night, going over the past few years ago, and you know, if I just, there were 2 years where Ellie pushed Joel away and didn't want anything to do with him. As much as he tried and interfering with her patrols and all these other stuff, she pushed him away and just wanted nothing to do with him. And those 2 years of exile for Joel, Ellie probably just, I can't believe I did that. That was 2 years we could have had. And then just as they're about to get back, Joel's gone. So, it is about revenge, but I think it's also just a guilt, like a deep-seated guilt. So anything involved in Joel and Ellie, just for me, is aces. One of the things I said when I finished the grounded playthrough is that I wanted to see where Joel and Ellie's relationship went, and this game answered it. They started off great, they had the museum, and then just that doubt, and Joel continuing to lie. And Ellie has to go and search the truth, and all comes asunder, and they never get quite back to where they were, but they get close. It's kind of tragic. Another thing I like, the discussion around the game. People hate it, people love it, people are in between, and I like reading, I like listening, I like watching people tell me why they hate the game, and they can point out stuff and say, that was stupid. I'm like, I see your point. That was stupid. I see your point. And then other people on the other side going, well, no, that was actually brilliant, and this is why. I'm like, that's a good point. And that's brilliant. I'm like, that's a good point. And then, like, you can point any aspects of the game, character motivations. Some will say the writing is amazing. Some will say the writing is piss poor. I'm like, you can say whatever you want, and I think universally people agree. It looks great. It plays pretty good. But it's the story that seems to divide people. And I kind of like the discussion around it. And no matter how you interpret the game, I don't think you're wrong. You can interpret the game as a heaping pile of crap. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's what the game is for you, and you're not wrong. You can interpret the game as an absolute masterpiece, the best game of the past decade. And I'm like, if that's how you felt, you're not wrong. So I like that. The discussion around it, I like listening to the developers and their thought process. I like listening to people who hate the game, people who love the game, people who fall in between. Yeah, the discussion around this game is something I haven't seen in a long time. Maybe ever. So I'm still watching video interviews and podcasts and spoilercasts even now. And the game's been out quite a while. The gift that just keeps on giving. Another like, visually stunning. I mean, do we even need a PS5? Right, how much better can games possibly look? It's immaculate. I found myself stopping and just looking around. The section with Dina on the horse. I'm not riding the horse. I jumped off the horse pretty quick and started just jogging around and panning up and looking at the buildings and going, can I go in here? Can I go in there? Just like absolutely stunning. Also the animation and the attention to detail. Ellie and the workbench and all the things she does with the guns, and that's pretty cool. The rope, the rope, winding up the rope before you throw it. I'm thinking that is such an unnecessary detail. Like in most games, I pick up the rope or I pick up the cable and I just run and the cable drags behind. It's like, no, in this one it's so I'll loop it and I'll loop it and I'll loop up the whole thing and she'll stop when it's, and then as it comes out, it's kind of giving a bit of slack. Like that must have taken some poor fecker a long time, maybe even groups of people, a long time to get that right. Just astounding. Attention to detail. And then with the Abbey section over in Haven and the Scars location and the flames, there are like so many moments this you kind of go, I don't know how games can look better. So visually stunning. Combat is just, I get into a combat arena, especially as Ellie. I prefer it as Ellie doing the stealth version and kind of having the bow. Abby was a bit more kind of like playing as Joel in the first game, kind of, I'm just going to go hell for leather, which is kind of a nice change of pace. But the Ellie sections of hiding in the grass and taking everything out stealthily, and the combat arenas seem to be bigger with more variation and larger in scope and more detailed, and the grass is just like, it's such a great thing, being able to go prone, Ellie lying on her side and being able to take out people. The combat is so satisfying. It really is. And I don't think I've fully explored all of it. I relied an awful lot on the bow. I barely used the smoke bomb. I think I accidentally used it once, thinking it was a nail bomb from the first game. Nope. The tripwires, or the trip mines, I did not use them nearly enough. I'm really looking forward to going back in and exploring the full array of weapons and stuff, and mines, and the Molotov cocktail is a standout. Also, I didn't know you could jump off stuff and stab people, so I'm looking forward to doing that. The verticality. Yeah, the combat is just spectacular. I really like the slower moments of where you're just sort of going through the world and combat is not part of it. Like there's the big combat section and then it's kind of a take a breath and let's wander around, let's have the characters talk. Like that open-ish worldy section with Dina when you're Ellie in the early game and you're going into like a music store and they're chatting about the stuff and Dina's getting on the drums. I'm just like, this is delightful. It reminds me kind of Left Behind, of just that the characters exist in the world and I want to be part of it. We like those sections. Open world-ish section with Dina, I think it was big enough. I don't want anything bigger than that. That was like, when I got to it and I realized how big it was, I kind of get a thing of, oh no, I have to explore every inch of this. I can't leave this area without going everywhere and doing everything. Oh, this is going to be, okay, start the left and we're going to go there to do, and then check the map like, oh no, I gotta go over here. And it gets me going. I get really nervous I'm going to miss something, which I did. Standout levels. For me, there's two. The TV tower. When I'm coming up to the TV tower and seeing what's happened there, and there's this sort of eeriness of, this is a bad place. And as I'm going through the rooms, I'm thinking, oh no, at any moment now, stuff is about to go really wrong. And of course, there's people hanging and it's like, oh no, the tension ramps up and builds. And then there was just this chaotic gunfight at the end. This slow builds. It's like, there's nothing really around the corner, but I'm going down these corridors pretty slowly because I don't know what there is. And eventually it's chaos. I really like that one. The other standout level for me is Haven burning. Wow. I mean, that was just spectacular. And there's the scars and then there's the wolves. We got to get through it. And you're on horseback and everything is ablaze. And then even some of the segments of trying to sneak through, which I did manage. I thought that was just incredible. That whole section with the Sephirites and the scars. I want to call them scars, it's just easier because I think I might be mispronouncing Sephirites. But that whole thing was just, wow. Like, what a great cap off to things. The ending with Ellie on the shoreline, the fog, and Abby and Lev on the boat off, and then returning to the house. It's like, this is the lowest I've ever seen a character in a video game. It's just like, lost everything. Lost Joel, lost Dina, lost Jessie, lost her family life, lost out on her purpose, her revenge. Which I do think her not killing Abby was a good thing. Otherwise, there's no hope for Ellie. She's gone over the edge. You know, I think having that moment of, I can try to forgive. So, however, something somebody pointed out, which I didn't notice, and I have to recheck this. When Ellie leaves Dina and the baby, she's not wearing her bracelet. However, when she's back to play the guitar, or to try to play the guitar, oh, she even lost her fingers, can't play the guitar. You'll notice the bracelet is on her. Before she came back to the farm, did she go to Jackson, meet Dina and make amends, and then said, okay, I'm just going to go to the farmhouse and see if I want to gather any things. And she does, and she leaves it all behind, and that's a part of life she's going to have to move on from. But if you notice the bracelet, you're going to have to check this, it does recontextualize the very end of, it's not Ellie completely lost, and who knows, she might just go drown herself down by the river. But it's that she's already been to Jackson, and she's already met Dina, and now she's come to the farmhouse, realised she doesn't want to take anything from that, and is going back to Jackson. So maybe a happier ending than we think. I like seeing Abby's backstory. It was like, who is this monstrous person who's torturing Joel? And then it's like, oh, right, yeah. You killed her dad. I get it. Not only did, much in the same way that Abby killing Joel robbed Ellie of that closure, closing the loop and reconciliation with Joel. Joel killing Abby's father completely evaporated hope for Abby. She was a firefly, look for the light. They were trying, at least they thought they could make a vaccine. Now, we know, as we're going through, making a vaccine is actually really bloody difficult. And if doctors in the post-apocalyptic landscape. Like, can they really make a vaccine? Can they get it up to production standpoint? Like, do they have infrastructure? They thought they could make a vaccine. Whether or not they could, I don't know. I kind of doubt. But they believed in what they were doing, and Abby believed in what they were doing, and that was part of being a Firefly. And once her dad died and the vaccine possibility just died with it, it's a loss of hope. It's like, that's what Abby was robbed of, hope. So she's just kind of this militant, and you know what, I'll get revenge on Joel, and I'll turn myself into a machine. I'll pump iron, and I'll be obsessed with it, and I'll give up potential love interest with Owen. And no, it's all about finding Joel and putting things right, and if I can kill him, then somehow I've got peace. But like, she doesn't. She's still lost, really. Until maybe the very end, where she goes in pursuit of the Fireflies. So killing Joel, I think Abby was completely justified in doing. Torturing him? I don't think so, but I'll get to that. Yara! What a little badass, huh? Arm completely mangled, fight on. Arm amputated, I'm fine, let's go in pursuit of my brother. Nothing stops this little girl. And she takes out the head of the wolves, Isaac. Wow. Tommy. Tommy in the first game was a guy who's kind of over his old ways. And this, you saw him return to those old ways of complete, like, destruction and a one-man wrecking crew. As you're pursuing Tommy with Ellie and Dina and just seeing what he leaves in his wake is like, one person did this? Oh, jeez. And then, of course, when you're playing as Abby and he's the sniper and you realize how deadly Tommy is. Like, Tommy, you just elevated yourself to just this mythical level. However, it doesn't end well for Tommy. That's why it's so sad seeing him towards the end and how broken he is. Like, not only physically, but mentally. You know, can't walk. He's lost his sight eye. His relationship with Marie fell apart. And the one thing he's clinging to is then, well, if I can avenge Joel, but I need Ellie to do it. And like, that whole Tommy scene towards the end is just like a killer. If Tommy gets a little spin-off, I'd be on board with that. Maybe back in those old smuggler days with Joel, like they talk about what they went through to survive. Like a game about Joel and Tommy in those smuggling days and what, like the scars are left on Tommy and why he tried to build this dam and build Jackson. I think that'd be cool. I quite like seeing how the scars lived off the land. They practiced what they preached. Mostly. Except when it came to the soldiers. But how they built houses out of wood. The way they communicated through whistling. Like they were a completely different group than anything else. There was the militia of the wolves and there was the kind of, the tree huggers. Who were quite lethal. I initially did not like going into the Scars area, but once I was there and learning about it and going into all their huts, very cool. The new enemies introduced, the Shambler and the Rat King. My goodness, absolutely brilliant. I think the Shambler was terrifying because he rushes you and he doesn't have much HP, but you gotta take care of him. The Bloater was much improved. Now he's an absolute tank. He's even more powerful than the first game, which makes sense because it's 4 years later. And then seeing Ground Zero as Abby and the Rat King, bits dangling off of him, and you see it's kind of like 8 or 9 different enemies just globbed together, and whoa. It's a compelling game. I normally tap out at around 2 to 3 hours of playing a game. I kind of like, okay, that's normally my limit. For this, one day I played it 6 hours. Like I played for 2-3 hours and then kind of stopped and went, okay, that's grand. And then like, I want to see what happens. So, alright, I'll play just a little bit more and a little bit more. And then you're looking at the clock going, what time is it? Oh, good grief. Yeah, I played 6 hours in one day. Very much a compelling game. And it was like, where is this going? I want to see what's next. The accessibility. All I gotta say is, you can play the game blind? Are you kidding me? What? Accessibility in this is next level. You can change everything. Text size, HUDs, reticles, how much you can listen, how easy it is to find objects, color blindness settings, text to speech. You can do so much. And I think it is now kind of the gold standard of what accessibility in a video game is. It should be a thing of like anyone should be able to play a video game. So the folks who went above and beyond, from my understanding, the accessibility was brought up to the game's director, Neil Druckmann. He went, yeah, fine. And then it was a thing of, well, you know, the game's getting kind of big and needs to be finished. We don't need quite so many accessibility functions, but the folks in charge of the accessibility they kept pushing for it. Even to the point of, guys, we got to finish the game. We can add them in later. And then no, they just went above and beyond and got really deep into trying to get this game possible to be played by literally anyone. Quite liked the Abby and Lev sections where they got to learn each other a bit better and learn about their past, learn about what happened, and the exchange of ideas, and of course the Sky Tower, and that whole section was nice. It was kind of like just characters getting to know each other. That was nice. On to my okays of the game. Stuff that happened, I was like, that's okay. Joel dying. That's okay. Luck was bound to run out at some point. Even Joel knew this. He was quite accepting of just get on with it. People in this world don't live till old age that often. I think Ellie and Dina have a situation or a conversation about it earlier in the game. Like, that's the way to go, you know. Old age. I didn't really connect with any of the companions throughout the game. I liked Ellie and Dina. I think I would have preferred if Dina was in the game more. And then kind of, I think they were building, for me anyway, I felt like it was being built towards something really good. But it didn't quite get there because obviously she's having some complications with her pregnancy, so she stays behind. And you do revisit her as Ellie, but yeah, I think the building blocks something really good and just kind of didn't get there for me. Jesse was there. He's fine. Mel and Manny, I think his name is, didn't connect with them either. Sympathised with Mel. I'll get on to Abby and Owen in a bit and how much never mind. Yara as a companion I liked, but it was like she was in the game for such a small amount of time, and the closest to like that great companion relationship was Abby and Lev, but again it was short. So instead of having one great companion and main player relationship like in the first game with Joel and Ellie, it was like, well, here's time with this character, and then here's time with that character, and here's time with this character, and here's time with that. It was like, I never really had that kind of deep connection with any of them like I had with Ellie in the first game. I initially despised all of the guitar sections. Why am I strum the thing? I'm like, I don't care. And then it comes up again. I'm like, oh, just play the bloody guitar. I don't care. But when I found out that on the touchpads, it's not just a strum. Each part of the touchpad is a string and you can kind of tap away at it. It's like, And then seeing videos on YouTube, people actually playing real songs on the guitar and using that sort of, that's one string, that's another string, that's another string. Like okay, that's kind of brilliant. I didn't get any of that. So initially I just groaned at every guitar section, and now I'm going, well, for some people it's really, really good. On to my dislikes. Major thing for me is just a pacing thing. Abby's section dragged. It really did. They had some highlights with the Sky Bridge and the hospital and the Scars location, but that whole segment with Mel and Manny out in patrol is like, that just ground everything to a halt, and I got so tired of it. And then her helping out Yara and Lev and meeting up with them and going in pursuit of Owen. It's like all that was just like, cut this in half. This is dragging on. And then the scavenging loop, like, I'm back to square one with my character. I got to upgrade everything again. And when I'm finding manuals and I'm just praying, I'm like, okay, so this thing can be upgraded, and then you're like, oh, here's a new segment and you can get supplements to upgrade that. And I'm hoping, okay, that's it. And then I find another manual. It's like, okay, so now there's 3 things you can upgrade with supplements. I'm thinking, how feckin' long am I going to be doing this? And then I got a 4th one. I'm like, oh, I'm tired of scavenging. I'm just tired. Even the combat encounters, all of it just became repetitive. Had some high points, but the baseline of that entire second half with Abby, and we just get on with stuff. The whole love triangle between Abby, Mel, and Owen, couldn't care less about. I think Abby and Owen are terrible people. Mel is right in that, like, Owen is the real piece of shit, okay? And here's why. He pursued Abby. He was a bit of a wanker. Like, she kept saying, I gotta go back to my training. I gotta go back to my training. So stop. He's like, it felt like a petulant child. Listen, mister, time out. Okay, you go off and do what you want. Abby's going off training. But no, he kept doing it. And then he's ended up with Mel. She's pregnant. Has sex with Abby. And the remorse Abby shows for it the following day, I kind of give her like, okay, well, moment of passion, and there's obviously this misconnection, and they still have a deep love for each other. And Abby felt bad about it. But then Owen's like, yeah, the hell with my girlfriend and her pregnant kid. Oh, sorry, my kid. She can go to hell. Me and you, Abby, we should run away together. And yeah, don't we deserve to be happy? No, you got a responsibility, fella. Pregnant girlfriend, half of that is on you. Chasing after Lev. All that Abby went through to get the medication for Yara, to save her life. And then Lev gets in the little speedboat and goes off to the Scars location to find his mother. And then Abby's going after him, and all I'm thinking is, I'm tired of chasing, I'm tired of doing stuff for people. Can we just get on with it? However, when I got to the Scars location, it was kind of brilliant, but when I saw Lev going off to the speedboat, I'm going, please don't chase after him. Just went to the hospital for medication, and that was a whole ordeal. Chasing after this one little kid in a war zone between the Scars and the Wolves. Are you out of your mind? Abby was lucky to survive the Rat King, and now is like, oh, let's go into a war zone. What are you doing? The kid wants to go off and die? Let him off. I understand the guilt from Lev's perspective, like, I'll at least try and save our mother. Like, Abby, that's not your job. Right, that's not your job. And then Yara goes along, and Yara dies, and Lev lives, and I know it's just like there's no net gain to any of it. Relating it to the pacing thing, again, my biggest issue is just Abby's section is too long. If Abby's section was halved, I think this game would be much better. So I'm 10 hours in as Abby, and I still don't know what happens after she's held Ellie at gunpoint. I became quite numb to the killing. Why do the people's lives in the cutscenes matter any more than the 50 I killed to get here? Right? Killed him, killed her, killed him, killed her, killed him. Like, even getting the medicine for Yara, the amount of wolves I kill along the way, it's like, but why are they any better than this little girl? I know you can get through sections without killing people, but first time around you're killing mostly everyone, because I didn't know where the exit is. Where do I go? I'm in this area, I don't know where the exit is. He's him away, she's him away. They're all dying. And then I can kind of take a breath, and then where am I actually going? I think there's too many enemies in the game. I think half as many enemies, and make kills matter more. A dislike for me. I like the game. I don't like Abby. She does two things which I find are completely deplorable and beyond forgiveness. The torturing of Joel. If it wasn't for Owen, she'd still be torturing him. If it wasn't for Ellie barging in, she'd still be torturing him. That's bad. That's really bad. And then to make it even worse, in a moment in which Kratos wouldn't even do, after knocking Dina unconscious, takes the knife to her throat, Ellie says she's pregnant, Abby says, good. What? Thankfully Lev steps in. But you were going to are you out of your mind? Oh, that was like, Ellie killed Mel, yes. But Ellie didn't know she was pregnant. Also, Owen was an idiot and just tried to grab the weapon off Ellie, which was stupid. And both of them were stupid in that moment. Just hands up and who knows. But Abby was going to willfully, deliberately, out of spite, in a fit of rage, slit the throat of a pregnant woman. Between that and the torturing of Joel, you're out. The only point she showed remorse was for having sex with Owen throughout the game. All the killing she did, the betrayal of the wolves, which I don't think she really felt that strongly about. It was just sort of going along to get along. Those two acts, torturing of Joel, pretty willfully gonna slit at Dina's throat. Those 2 moments for me, sorry Abby. Final dislike, like I've mentioned before, the scavenging. Just really tiresome. And maybe that's the point, right? It's not easy being in this world and you gotta constantly open drawers and search for things. But I grew very tired of it after, especially, 20 hours in of picking up stuff. I'm like, I'm so tired of this. In conclusion, I look forward to playing it again. I'm looking forward to New Game Plus. I'm looking forward to going for the Platinum. And that's the most important thing. Even with the gripes about the game, I like more about the game than I dislike. I think there's so many great points to this game and the discussion around it and the interpretation of the story. And I'm still learning new things about it. And hearing from the developer's standpoint, like you can look up interviews with Neil Druckmann, or you can listen to the Last of Us podcast is actually quite excellent because they talk to Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson, Haley Gross, the co-writer, the animators on the team, who else was it? One of the artists on the team, and they kind of delve into the intent behind things, like how difficult it was to get glass to break just the right way, or how difficult it was to get Ellie's fingers to animate for the guitar and get that not looking weird. Yeah, it is really great insight. And then also another thing, check out subreddits. There's The Last of Us subreddit, which is all positive and praising of part 2. And then there's a Last of Us 2 subreddit, which is damning of all things The Last of Us part 2. It's good to see both perspectives. Various interviews, just type in Neil Druckmann into YouTube. You'll find people who hate him, people who love him, and everything in between. I'd recommend watching at least a couple of interviews to give the guy a chance. I don't think he's the devil. But yeah, there's still an awful lot coming out each day. There was a conversation between Troy Baker, who plays Joel, and Neil Druckmann, which is kind of nice. Laura Bailey went on... Who was she on? She was on Kind of Funny, and she plays Abby in the game. And she kind of did address like the amount of hate she was getting, which was, don't do that, folks. I don't think that needs to be said for people who are watching this video. I'm glad Naughty Dog took a risk. I'm glad they tried something a bit out there. Some parts worked for me, some parts didn't, but it's certainly an interesting game and fun to talk about. Those are my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. The next video of mine will be Platinum Journey for The Last of Us Part 2, and that'll be out end of August, early September. Until then, take care.